Hi everybody, welcome to Songtrust Instagram Live. Today we're cracking the code on video game music sync. My name is Tyra and I work here at Songtrust and I will be hosting today's event. We'll be talking about video game sync with our friends Danielis and Juan from Trivium Studios. They are the creators behind the event Video Game Music Con Puerto Rico. Our industry experts are here. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Juan, you want to get us started with who we are and kind of what we do?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here and talk a little bit about music sync in the business of video games, which is similar to other industries, but has some differences that we'll talk about in a moment. So we are part of an organization called Trivium Studios, based in Puerto Rico, and we basically related to audio for media. So be it film, video games, television, etc. Right now, our main event is called Video Game Music Con, and basically it's conferences where we talk about the world of video game music and audio, and anyone interested in composing for video games, sound designing for video games can go and learn about the process from industry experts and people that are working in the industry. So that's our background, and I think we have a little bit of a community forming here in Puerto Rico because the video game industry is sort of starting out, and we're trying to build it along with other organizations here like the PRGDA, the Puerto Rico Game Developers Association. Anything you want to add, Danielis?
I think one of our main goals, right, as you mentioned, is just to get people in community and to know about the tools that are available to them, which is a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. Because sync is just one of the things that you can do as a producer, as a composer, and as a musician, right? To get your music out there and to work in a video game.
It'd be great to start off, like yourselves, everyone starts their journey in sync a little bit differently. So in your opinion, what is the best way to get your foot in the door and get your music placed in video games?
One of the things that's most important about the video game industry in general is to actually network and make friends inside, right? Since it's such a small community, even if it has a lot of big projects going on, everyone knows each other and they know what kind of work they do. So one of the things that I would do is go to events or conferences that can get you just known and your music known, right? So anything like our conference, Video Game Music Con, Puerto Rico, Game Developer Conference in San Francisco, Game SoundCon in LA. That's just one way that you can connect with the people that are doing things, they're making their own projects, that you can know about what they're doing, because one very important thing for you as a musician, a producer, or just an artist looking to sync is that you know what they need in the project, right? That's really important. And see what you can bring to their table, right? So I would say that's one of the main ways. It's not even about music first, right? It's just about getting to know people and getting to know their projects and what they need for them.
What are some platforms that music supervisors look through to find artists for their soundtracks?
Okay, so just to sort of add a little bit to the getting your foot in the door aspect of the question, make sure that when you're marketing your music, that you keep in touch with the trends that you see in media around you. So it's important that you watch movies and pay attention to what sort of music they're licensing, because music it moves by trends, right? So sometimes we have different trends that are very, very hot at the moment, and everyone wants a song that sounds like this song on the radio. So if you can make your music sound more current and more trendy, if you will, then it's more likely that you'll get picked up by a publisher.
So, in your opinion, now that we've talked about how to get your foot in the door, what are the different sync uses in video games And what are the differences between having a sync in a video game trailer versus actually having it in game? And what does that mean for creators?
Right, so that's a really big question. I'm gonna talk a little bit about it and then gonna bounce off one. So there are different types of sync licenses, right? Even before we even get to the video game part, we can license a song or a composition, right? And we can license a master. So when we license a composition, what you're doing is you're licensing the aspects that make up that song, right? You're licensing the melody and the chords and the harmony and the lyrics and all of that, right? And that means that you can sort of play around with it, right? You can do remixes, you can be more creative with it. Now, when you sync or your sync license a master, what you're doing is that you acquire a license to use the recording as is. And usually it's a very specific recording, right? If you have multiple versions of a recording, it's going to be a specific one. And so that's the main difference, right, between a song and a master's, right? So let's say that you want to license something for a trailer and you want to put maybe like an orchestra to it and only use like little bits and cut up a song. Maybe you want to do a song composition licensing, right? Because you want to be able to more creatively use it or modify it. And then let's talk a little bit about when you want to talk a bit about how is it different licensing within the video game versus a trailer?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because video games are not considered a public performance per se. So when you have your music in a video game, no royalties are paid to the composers. So what they work out is usually a licensing deal where you pay a fee to use the song, as Daniel has explained. The license can be anywhere from, I don't know, $600 to $2,000 or more, according to who is being licensed. And let's say that there's a debate in the video game industry about whether or not they should pay royalties to composers for streaming. When streamers play the video game on their YouTube channel and the music is playing in the background, there's been a very big debate on that. It's still not resolved. So right now it's sort of a debate whether they should receive royalties for that or not. And sometimes the platform itself has to do with it. So sometimes Twitch has certain rules and YouTube has other set of rules. So the royalties are really dependent on that. But as for the video games themselves, composers do not receive royalties for their sync and the music that plays in the video game.
Yeah. There's one exception that it's something very new and still very in debate. For Europe, there are laws specifically that say digital downloads can be counted as a public performance. So there is some history. We have some articles that we can link up later that talk about PlayStation games in Europe considering public performances for digital downloads. But that's still sort of, murky water, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think that you're not getting paid royalties because many of these deals are probably like work for hire, which means you give up your copyright ownership. And I think it's important for anyone out there thinking of getting their music placed in video games to consider, adding a clause around being entitled to performance royalties generated from your music.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you're not entitled to royalties, you should absolutely make sure that you retain the rights to your music or negotiate what's called a buyout, where the people licensing your music would buy the rights. But you should definitely try to retain the rights so that you can use your music in other places, and that you have ways of generating income from that piece of music that's not just the contract for the composer.
Absolutely. And to be aware that Songtrust can tell us a bit more about this, but to be aware that you do receive royalties, right, for the composition and for the master, but there's the publishing side, and you still can hold, copyrights over the composition. So a lot of times it's about finding the right kind of deal that works out for you.
Yeah, definitely. And the royalty infrastructure, like you said, it's still being built out, and it's still kind of, like you said, in murky water. But, you can be earning royalties for music that is used in commercials, trailers, like you said, or other promotional materials. And also, you can earn royalties when video game soundtracks are released,
Absolutely.
like on vinyl or streaming platforms. So, Songtrust can help you with that.
Absolutely, yes. And yeah, that's another thing, right? Like, you don't have to only license to be used within a video game, but also it can be in a trailer, which doesn't actually apply the sort of same rules as a video game. So you can still be involved within the video game industry in different aspects.
Definitely. Piggybacking off of that question, what is the difference between licensing full albums rather than just a single song?
So when we're talking about full albums, right? For example, we had Tom Salta speaking about making concept albums, right? So one of the things that you can do is sort of make a concept album that then you can pitch, right? So it's not just one song that they might want to license, but the whole thing, because it fits into a specific genre, or it just meets the company's needs or the developer's needs. In that case, you could want to do a buyout deal, right? You may want to do that, or you may just want to go for a licensing deal. The cool thing is that you get multiple of your songs licensed, and you worked on a whole concept album. So it's just really about what you're looking to do, right? If you're already sort of building an album that has a very specific concept, a very specific sound, and sort of some target genres, then you might want to go ahead and sell this as a complete work, right? Rather than just one song that you want to push out there. So it sort of really depends, but it can be a good deal for you if you are more of an artist who works with a whole album versus releasing singles.
It's also important to note that you can, if you do a specific type of music, you can develop or produce an EP, say, and then you can put it all on a platform where music publishers can find it and license it. So maybe you have a set of 5 songs that are in a specific genre, and you make a bundle and you place them on a website. And then when you start to get licensed by those companies, you can find out who licensed, contact the music publisher, and sort of make friends. And then you can start to build relationships that way, sort of cut out the middleman and start developing relationships one-on-one with the music publishers that use your music. And that way you can start developing a network of people that like your music and know what you do.
So, like you said, creating concept albums, super important. So, as a video game player myself, I love video games. I realize how important the work that you do is, and when you have to score and create these projects. And I'll be playing a video game, and if there's a scene where, let's say, zombies are chasing me, and the music keeps me on my toes, and it really immerses players and makes you feel the pressure of staying alive. So, as composers yourselves, what is the process to create the right environment or ambiance for the player's journey?
Well, it's important to place the music in the environment of the game. That could be accomplished by choosing certain instruments, by doing a specific style of music, or by simply making a theme that connects with the player. A game that I like to reference a lot is The Last of Us, in which the soundtrack has a very specific instrumentation that sort of makes you feel like you're in a post-apocalyptic world, right? It's nostalgic. It's sort of rustic in a way that it uses instruments that they're very natural, they're not overproduced, and that sort of thing is very important in the aesthetic of the music. Not just that the music is good, but that the music fits in the world, it fits with the characters, it fits with the style of the art of the game as well.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I feel like one of the most important parts is the sonic aspect. What are your instruments? Because as musicians or as composers, we're really good at composing, right? We're really good at making up chords and melodies, and that's really important. Themes that can connect with the player, and harmonic structures that can portray what you really want to portray. But when we get down to the sonic aspect of it, are you going to use an orchestra? Are you going to use electric instruments? Are they going to be processed or not? It's really sort of becomes more intimate and more personal. So I would say, to anyone who's starting or is composing music for video games, you really want to take that into consideration. For example, if you look at Breath of the Wild, right, you have your normal orchestra sort of acoustic instruments, but the way they use them, the piano, when when you're out in the world, you're writing around, you have a sort of very fragmented feel to it. And when you're up in the air with the divine beasts, you have sort of a string orchestra that's sort of looping and going around because that's what the character's experiencing. So you want to take into consideration not only the melodic and harmonic value of music, but also the true sonic choices that you can make as a composer.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that. That's really cool to see the insight behind all of that. So obviously, the video game industry has been growing exponentially, and soundtracks and scoring are now receiving, gaining well-deserved recognition. And the Video Game Awards started over 10 years ago with their Best Score and Music category. And now this year, the Grammy Awards created the category for Best Score Soundtrack for video games. And Ubisoft Assassin's Creed Valhalla did win the first ever Grammy. So what does this mean for musicians as the liaison between gaming and the music industries continues to grow closer?
You want to take that one, starting off one?
Yeah, so it was certainly a very great achievement for the game industry to be a part of the categories for the Grammys. I think the next step for the video game industry is to just start getting more recognition in terms of independent games and games that are sort of on a smaller scale. And I think this is a great step for that, because when you open up the category for video game soundtrack in the Grammys, the encouragement that you receive as a composer is amazing, because you have an avenue for receiving validation for your work. Even getting nominated for a Grammy is a great achievement on its own. And I think that opening up these awards for video game music and opening up these avenues to get the composers to get recognition inspires and motivates us to keep composing and keep producing quality content for video games, and getting even closer to the quality of every other genre, and elevating it, the video games, to that sort of category.
Yes, absolutely. And bouncing off that, a lot of Academy members that we had, with just past year, there were a lot of film composers and just a lot of people that weren't necessarily involved with the video games industry, and that's just because of the nature of how the Grammys have always been, And now suddenly the door opens for a lot of composers who maybe have worked for years in the video game industry, but were not members of the Academy, just because we didn't have this category, or it wasn't just greatly considered. We had seen historically people like Austin Wintory receiving nominations. Babayeru from the soundtrack from Civilizations also being nominated, right? But this really sort of cements a place for the medium within the awards, right? And says we're sort of here, and we deserve this recognition that it's because it's such a different medium from every other medium. It has its own challenges, right? And it's just great that we can have sort of the space to appreciate it and to continue growing it.
Definitely. So, as a video game composer, what does the process of getting nominated for a Grammy look like?
So we consulted, right, at the Grammys website for this, but basically you do need to be a member to submit, right? So you have to be a member of the academy. So it means that you need to have published music and have gone through the proper channels to become a member. And then once you've become a member, then you can submit, and then you go through screening processes, then nominations, then you get special nominations, and you have the final voting. So it's a very long process, right? And one of the questions that came up were like, well, why didn't this game not get nominated? Why didn't this other game get nominated? And it's a really sort of slow and big process that requires people who really know the different games that are out and the different soundtracks to submit and to be more participant of the awards. So I believe that the more the more we go through the years and into submitting games and soundtracks, we're going to see even more variety of styles and composers being nominated and getting the chance to participate in the awards.
So, just another question to wrap up. How does a remix of an artist's song come to life if someone reaches out to them, a music supervisor, and says, I like your song, but I want to remix it and make it sound like our composed score? How does that work with the licenses?
Well, in the case of remixes, you could do the remix yourself as the artist, or you could work with the composer of the game to do the remix, in which case it would be a collaboration. But I think that the sync license would still have to be dependent on the artist that made the song in the beginning. So if the original artist needs to negotiate a contract first, and then once the song is licensed, it can be the remix can proceed, but not before it's negotiated that the licensing will happen.
Yeah, in that case, probably what the music supervisor would do is just license the song itself, right, the composition itself. But of course, you as an artist can go and say, "Hey, do you want to collaborate? Do you want me to be involved in this process?" Because you could just say, "Hey, here's the license for it," and that's that. But and this goes back to the first question. How do you put your foot in the door? And just one of the things is being open to that, being open to work and collaborate and see what your skills and what your artistry can bring to the table.
Are there any resources that you recommend or any advice that you have for anyone who wants to get their music placed in a video game or is starting?
We did have some platforms. Let me have a list over here of some platforms that you can use for this. We had Taxi, and we had, those are just some of them. Taxi, Pump Audio, Rumblefish, Artlist. Those are some places that you can put your music out there, and just be able to get licensed. Monday, do you have any other?
Yeah, make sure that you're very clear on your rights, the rights of your music. You read every contract before signing it, and maybe even run it by a lawyer, because in these cases, it's very easy to just lose the rights to your music. When you're reviewing a license, there are a few terms that you should keep an eye out for. Term is how long the license is going to last. Territory is the part of the world that the license covers. The fee is negotiable, and you can set it to whatever you like, but you can always bring it up or down depending on what the music publisher offers. And a very important part of the contracts are the exclusivity, right? You want to make sure that you read that very well, because most sync licenses are non-exclusive, and that means that the song can be licensed to multiple parties at the same time. If it's exclusive, then you should be getting paid more for the exclusivity. You should also make sure that the music is protected by copyright before you do any negotiation of any kind. Other than that, just make music that you enjoy, and keep an eye out for any trends that you might be able to incorporate into your music, but never lose that originality in your music. I think that's really important for an artist that is trying to get their foot in the door, because originality at the end of the day is what attracts a music publisher to your music. It's not going to be that it sounds like everything. It can sound similar, but it should have your own brand and originality to it.
Thank you so much for talking to us and providing great insight into the world of video game sync. What are the best ways to stay connected with Trivium and Video Game Con, Music Con, Puerto Rico, for those tuning in?
You can follow our Instagram at Video Game Music Con, Puerto Rico.
It's Game Music Con PR, the main event page. So you can follow that for updates on the event, and Trivium Studios for just our main company page.
Awesome, thank you. We'll definitely check out Trivium's website and our Sync Crash Course, where we talk about all the ins and outs of Sync. You can head to our page to check that out.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much. Hope everyone learned something, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.